The Campbell Group has teamed up with PI Perspectives to offer listeners top-notch, affordable insurance solutions. Private investigators can get insurance for their business for as low as $305 per year. Apply now at piperspectivesinsurance.com and receive a quote back within 24 hours. Satellite Investigations has launched its new website full of great new content. Matt and his team have released some great informative blogs. Make sure you log in to LinkedIn and follow Satellite Investigations for the latest content. Check out the PI Institute of Education at piinstitute.com. Since 1989, Kelly Riddle has been teaching on subjects such as surveillance, nursing home investigations, insurance fraud, domestic investigations, hidden assets, and accident scene investigations. The PI Institute of Education is a featured learning partner in the investigatorstoolbox.com. So check out the free content on the site, then visit the Institute for more great savings on additional classes. Do you enjoy our podcast and the guests we bring you? Since 2019, Matt and his team have done their very best to give you amazing shows each week. If you feel like our show has helped you to be a better investigator, or maybe even inspired you to become an investigator, please let us know. We're looking for testimonials. Drop Matt an email with a recorded 20 to 30 seconds of you talking about this podcast. You can also email him something verbal about the website. His email is matthews@satellitepi.com. And if you really feel blessed for having this content, consider supporting Matt and our show by joining Investigator's Toolbox. You really have to see version 2.0. And at just 49 cents a day, it's a no-brainer. Now let's jump into this week's episode. Welcome to this week's episode of PI Perspectives. Today we're welcoming back our friend, Kelly Riddle. In December, Kelly released a survey to all PIs around the country. The results are in, and the guys are chatting about it. Check out the YouTube version of this show if you want to actually see the survey. So please welcome Kelly Riddle and your host, private investigator Matt Spaier.
And welcome everyone to this week's episode of PI Perspectives. This is Matt Spaier, your host. Today I have a great friend, great sponsor of the show, just an all-around guru in the industry. And I want to welcome Kelly Riddle back to the program. Kelly, how are you?
Hey, Matt. Good to see you again, brother, and excited to be here. Great topic.
Yeah, great to have you on. Usually when something's trending in the industry and there's something to kind of talk about, you're like my go-to guy. I'm just going to call Kelly and let's talk about it. But you took it one step further. The thing that people are talking about in the industry is something that actually you put out through the PI Institute of Education, a survey across the country to all investigators. Why hasn't anyone thought about doing that before? So we're going to dedicate this show to kind of talking about this survey because it's really interesting. You did get a good amount of participation with it, right?
Yeah, we did actually. And, it was kind of at the end of the year, December, and I didn't know what kind of turnout we were going to get, but I kind of did it intentionally because, it's a good time for everybody to, to measure where they are. And if they needed to increase rates or change their, whatever they're doing, that was the perfect time to do it. So that was kind of the thought behind it.
Right. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually go through that survey. We'll do something different. And if you're watching the YouTube version, you're going to benefit. I'm actually going to share the screen and we're going to go through the results of the survey. So if you're in your car, you got to go look on YouTube later. Don't stream it while you're driving, please. But definitely you want to check out the YouTube version if you want the full effect here. So before we get into the survey, obviously I know who you are. There are a bunch of people who know who you are, but not everybody is going to know who you are. So let's lay the foundation a little bit. Tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do in the industry and all that good stuff.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt. So Kelly Riddle, I'm based in San Antonio, Texas. I've had Calmar Global for 35 years. I've also had the PI Institute of Education for almost the same amount of years. And I belong to 24 associations and sit on 6 different industry boards, a couple of which you, Matt, are on as well. So we have a lot in common and in leadership of the industry.
Yeah, yeah, and it's just keeping your finger on the pulse, right? So Kelly speaks at a lot of conferences. We actually met at a conference years ago, and which it's a coming full circle. I think it was a Nally conference in Tampa, St. Pete, and
Yes,
they're going to be there at the end of January, which this is probably going to air before that. So yeah, full circle.
good.
And yeah, that's some cool stuff. So, all right, so I'm going to share the screen because we're going to dive right in. There's a lot of stuff here, and we should be able to pull it right up. Okay. All right, so we're just going to go through, and it looks like 216 people took part of this, and we're going to just go through the answers here and talk a little bit on it, right? So the first question was, are you in a state that requires licensing? So that's been a hot issue in Colorado, right? They
Yeah,
never
yeah.
had licenses, then they got licenses, then they lost licenses. So there are some states out there that actually don't require you to have a license to be a private investigator, right?
That's right. Yeah, Mississippi is another one of them. But so it's interesting. A little over 5% are in a state that does not require licensing. So that's I'm actually glad to see that. So it means that
Right.
someone's paid attention to the survey other than licensed PIs.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's good. We're reaching out there, and you're definitely getting the full tilt of everything. So the second question, are you licensed in more than one state? And that's important if you're on the border between states, and if you're doing an investigation, and let's say you're following a subject and they end up crossing over into that other state, are you prepared for that, right? So
Yeah.
um, let's talk about that a
And
little bit.
yeah, the majority, were licensed probably in one state. It should have been the question should have been, are you licensed in one state instead of are you licensed in more than one? But
Yeah,
as you see there, a little over 65%, is one state, 2 to 5 states are 32%, and I'm in that 1.4% of 16 or more. So but certainly is good for business. And like you said, if you're going to cross over, you really need to be licensed in more than one state.
yeah. I mean, so pretty much Calmar, right? So we're talking about carrying a license in the state, not hiring 1099 contractors to do the work in that state. You actually carry a license for your business in that state, right?
Yeah, that's right, exactly. And then it's getting to be, I think, more of a trend as you grow your business.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking to get into markets, and because so much of what we do now, you're able to do virtually, you do have the ability to service different markets, but always wise to be licensed in those markets that you're servicing, in case you have to do boots on the ground or any of that other kind of stuff. And you don't want a Department of State coming after you for sales tax. You're
Yeah,
operating in a particular state that you're not licensed for, or
yeah,
registered to collect sales tax. That could lead to lots of problems. So
yeah,
not
that's right.
recommended. Not recommended. Um, okay, so the next one is, do you operate in a state that requires continuing education? Again, a very interesting point. Not every state requires you to do continuing education to maintain your license. So
Yeah, I
it's
thought that was
40,
interesting.
46,
47%,
yeah, almost 47.
doesn't require any education at all, and 5%, 5 to 10 CEs is 11, little over 11%, and the bulk of them is 37, almost 38% requires 11 to 20 hours of CE. So it kind of shows where we are in our profession, I guess. Whether or not you do or do not need CEs.
Yeah, it's very interesting because you asked the question like, okay, well, why doesn't the state require you to do continuing education? Kind of would make sense that they would want you to mean a certain level of professionalism, making sure that you know what you're doing, when you're
Yeah.
out there doing your stuff, right? So what's the thought behind it? Now, I'm from a state that does not require continuing education, and that's New York, right? So they just want you to pay every 2 years to renew your license. And I've talked to the Department of State about it, because there are folks within our state association that would like to have continuing education. I think it's a good idea.
Sure.
The sense that I got was it was just too much heavy lifting for the state authority to be involved with it. It was just too much of a headache for them. They weren't interested in enforcing it. They weren't interested in any potential additional revenue, which they could, require to go through state sponsored training and collect revenue, but they just weren't interested in it, right?
Yeah, I think that's really a shame. It is, to set the program up and monitor it is going to be a little bit of a heavy load. But once you're up and running, I mean, to me, like in the state of Texas, you have to take ethics and you have to take our rules and procedures. Every 2 years you've got to do that. And so, if nothing else, it's a refresher and it's a reminder.
Yeah, that's always a good thing. And listen, just because you're not in or you're in a state that doesn't require you to do continuing education, if you're serious about your business and growing your business and being the very best at what you do, you should seek out this continuing education. How do you do that, right? You go to conferences, seminars, things that are out there, or you go visit something like the PI Institute of Education, where you've got tons of training there that Kelly has painstakingly put through and revamped, and you've freshened up the website. It's relaunched. It looks amazing.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, you can go there and really learn or get better at your craft. And that's what I appreciate about that particular website, right? Even it's available for folks that aren't even required to use it, but it's there if you need it, right?
Yeah, appreciate that. We're fixing to expand. We got 3 or 4 more instructors that we're adding, and like to have some of your training on there in the near future as well. So we're going to have a lot of other instructors on there.
Yeah, it's great when you start to branch out and you get different voices, right? Different people. Right. We've got some content from PI Institute of Education in Investigator's Toolbox, but we also have a bunch of others as well. Which is great. So I think you're right. Mixing up the face, mixing up the voice. Sometimes that helps a little bit too.
Absolutely.
Okay. So the next question: how long have you been a private investigator? And it looks like the majority of the folks who took part in this were either brand new or been around for a while.
Yeah.
No, that's pretty vague. But the 1 to 5 year category looks at almost 17%. And then the 16 to 20 year in business was almost 16%. Oh, and then I didn't even see the bottom here. Look at me. The best answer is almost 20%, 31 years or more, right?
Yeah, but I think that speaks to how this went out because as I mentioned, I belong to 24 associations and sit on the board of 6 of them. So I sent it out to those. So obviously, I think you're going to get a slant based on the fact that a lot of people that are in associations have been around a while. But I also did send it to social medias and stuff that was was not necessarily any association based. But I think this is one of those questions that is grounded in the fact that it was sent out to associations where you usually have people that have been around longer.
Sure. I know I got some feedback from my state association. Some folks who had actually seen it and are like, why haven't we done this for our own state? Like we should be polling our own members just to get a sense of data. I said, it's probably not a bad idea, right? To get something together. So
yeah, it's not any different than doing a post-conference survey,
Yeah.
So it tells you a lot of stuff that you need to know in leadership.
You're setting a trend, my friend. Okay. Were you an intern before becoming a private investigator? And that's a yes or no answer. So they can only go one way or the other.
Yeah. And I think this is not any kind of a surprise to either one of us. Florida, you have to be an intern. If you don't have experience and stuff. And so, but almost 83% had not been any type of intern. So that's not really shocking, but it is telling.
Yeah. I know it's not necessarily being an intern in New York, but they do require you to have prior experience, which is kind of like a catch-22, right? How do you get into the business when you need experience to get into the business? But they do want you to work for somebody. So what does that mean? That means I think it's 900 hours, which equates to about three years or so. 3 years worth of experience working for an investigative firm or law enforcement. So they do consider, having a career in law enforcement as meeting the requirement to be allowed to take the test. And then from there, you got to pass the test. Which
Yeah, and that's kind of how it is in Texas as well. You got to have, honestly, to own or manage an agency, you got to have 4 years experience. But to just be a PI for an existing agency, you just got to not have a criminal history and, be legal age.
Mm-hmm. Next question is kind of an interesting one. Are you currently a certified law enforcement officer?
Yeah, that was a little surprising to me. I thought we were going to have a lot more that that are currently licensed, and you know how it is. A lot of guys will hang their license underneath an agency and go work 8 hours a month just so they can keep their license, the police officer's certification active. So that was actually a little surprising to me that it was only for almost 5% that is currently.
Yeah, that 5% answered that question. Yes. So you do get those that moonlight, or maybe they're getting ready for post-retirement. They're getting things kind of in place. So that was interesting there. I think it freaked out a couple of people because there 3 people skipped the question.
Right.
They couldn't get it. Okay, so question 7: Are you a retired or previous law enforcement officer? All right, so kind of similar. Right? You're not working now, but do you have that background?
Yeah.
This was kind of interesting. I thought so. Let's talk about the answers here.
Yeah, when I first got into this business back in the mid '80s, I mean, almost everybody was current or previous law enforcement, and it's kind of sliding the other direction. So, now, are you retired or previous law enforcement? It said 40.5%, so less than 41% had prior law enforcement. So to me, that's a good and a bad thing. I mean, I think we need a lot of new faces into the profession. And like in Texas, if you were an insurance claims adjuster, a paralegal, something like that, you can qualify. That counts as experience. So I think we're bringing in a lot of people from different avenues.
Sure. Yeah, it is quite interesting. I think also with universities starting to really build up their criminal justice programs. Like it used to be back in the day, there weren't too many. If you wanted to get into criminal justice, there were like 4 or 5 opportunities around the country to go into. Maybe a community college would have vocational classes or something like that. But if you're serious in getting like a bachelor's degree, there were only like 4 or 5 colleges, and I think that's changed a lot. Where there is that push now to do it. I know Rory McMahon used to sponsor this podcast for a bit, has a whole program that he rolled out to do the education, in hand with some colleges and things like that. I know he had partnered up. So I think the trend is changing, and that may be why the numbers are a little higher, I think.
Yeah, good point. And Texas has one like that. It's not really, it's designed to get you to a point where you can own or manage your own agency. So I think it's like 60 hours or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very interesting trend here. All right, what do we got next? We have, what level of education do you possess? All right, 4 of them skipped the skipped the question too.
Well, I think, that's 2 things that was interesting to me, and that is almost 19% has a high school diploma and no advanced education. And then, it doesn't really surprise me that almost 47% had a bachelor's degree, but you had, 15% that had a master's. So, those 2 things, high degree of bachelor and high number of high school.
Yeah, I want to know who the 5 doctors who answered the 2% that answered that question, right? Who are those guys?
And if they started in the PI world or to begin with, if they migrated.
Right. What type of doctorate do they hold? That's a good question. Again, this is the bachelor degree, what we just covered there. I think because more universities are offering better programs. That you're seeing that drive. And I think, folks with just high school education, they're probably, in my guess would be, those are more surveillance type people. that they're just out there earning a living, doing, pounding the pavement, doing what they need to do to get it done. If I had to guess, I could be wrong.
I think you're probably right.
Yeah. All right. So the next one we have here is your degree in criminal justice, or is your degree in criminal justice or related field? This is again a yes or no. Very interesting response here too, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost half and half, 51 to 49. So most of 51 being not in criminal justice. So that's, again, you got a lot of people coming from different areas is migrating into this profession. So I don't know if that's good or bad, but you don't necessarily have to have a criminal justice degree. That's what I have. But, I was in law enforcement for 7 years. So it kind of made sense.
Right. Yeah, I think what I find interesting here is not only is it close, but it's like most people, the majority is they don't have that degree in criminal justice, which I think is kind of surprising. I know plenty of folks I went to school with for criminal justice that aren't doing criminal justice either, but that's another episode on a different program.
Good point. Yeah, good point.
I was just thankful enough to be able to do for a living what I actually went to school for. As I was paying for my college education, I was like, okay, at least I'm doing it. I'm not selling shoes like Al Bundy. I'm good.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that was me. It's all I ever wanted to do. So I had no other forethought.
Yeah. So that's good. All right. We'll do one more question before we take a quick break. Okay. Are you the owner of the PI company you work for?
Yeah, not necessarily surprising, right at 89% are the owner of the PI company. And, again, going back to the fact that this went out to mainly associations and stuff, it's not surprising.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the point I was going to make. Where you're soliciting this data from would indicate it's probably the owner would be the one looking at it. And if you're an owner, you're happy that your employees are not taking surveys while they're working, right? So,
right, exactly.
This has got to be encouraging as a business owner.
That's right.
So and it's an overwhelming response too, almost 89%. Well, this is a good place as any to take a break. So I think we're going to jump out, play a couple commercials, and when we come back, we're not quite halfway through, but getting there. And we'll rifle through and talk through this interesting stuff. So everybody sit tight, and we will be right back.
Over the past year, our industry has been the target of foreign governments and agencies that have attempted to recruit unsuspecting investigators to gather intelligence or immediate expatriates. PI Perspectives is teaming up with the Federal Bureau of Investigations to get the word out about this ongoing crisis. If you've been contacted by an individual or company that might seem suspicious, please contact the FBI at tips.fbi.gov. You can also contact the New York field office at 212-384-1000 to report suspicious activity in any state. The link is also in the show notes. Even if you completed a job and it still doesn't sit right with you, you can report this activity. The only way to stop this trend is to work together. So let's do it. Specializing in the research of liability for personal injury claims, Pacific Liability Research offers insurance assessments of all applicable liability coverages to help determine what a case is potentially worth. Have a case with no insurance policy? Since 2019, the highly trained staff on their insurance discovery team has located over 100 million plus in previously unknown insurance coverage. They offer a full refund for any inaccurate results, and they do not charge for no-hit searches. Additionally, Investigator's Toolbox members automatically receive 50% off their first case. Just mention Investigator's Toolbox when you fill out your first order. More information can be found at pacificliability.com. Contact them today and discover the immediate impact that Pacific Liability Research can provide.
I want to talk to everybody today about ScopeNow.com. ScopeNow has been a big-time sponsor of this program for quite some time, and I just love their service. I've been using them since the beginning. I'm one of their beta customers, and it's been so awesome to see them grow into the business that they are today, and just how they just keep reinventing themselves and pushing themselves to get more and more information. What it comes down to is ScopeNow is a tool that you definitely need to use if you do social media investigations, any internet research, and really spending less time digging around and looking for information, I think is one of the best points of how ScopeNow can help you. Their AI platform, their analytics are amazing. You really get an idea of what you need. You're reducing the time, you're reducing the manpower that you're spending on doing this research, because they're essentially doing it for you, and they're doing it correctly, which is most important. One of the new things that they're actually offering is this flagging system where you can flag behaviors and really highlight and look out for fraud. If you're doing a lot of fraud research, this is a fantastic tool, and you can set up alerts. So you have particular people that you're looking at, you can actually set up alerts to get notifications when the criteria that you set up is actually is flagged and goes off. It's really, really amazing. And their relationship and association analytics are top notch, really cutting edge and really, really cool. When they brought that out on version 3, it was a game changer. I mean, really being able to see how people interact together and having that relationship, analysis is really, really something that's cool. One of the other things about being involved with ScopeNow is their ability to offer webinars. Their team is cutting edge on putting together and getting out really, really great content. If you're a member of ScopeNow, if you know who they are, you've seen them around on LinkedIn, you'll know that they're constantly doing webinars on these new websites that are coming out, and they're really staying on top of it. And don't forget, any reports that you generate, you can actually white label those reports and put your own logos on and really make them look professional, which could equate to more billing for you as well. So check them out today. It's www.scopenow.com. They're a great, great company. They should be one of the tools in your toolbox, along with whatever kind of search engines you do. You need to make sure that ScopeNow is a part of that suite. Scopenow.com.
And welcome back to PI Perspectives. This is Matt Spaier, your host. We are joined today by the PI Institute of Education guru, Kelly Riddle. Kelly, welcome back to the program.
Thanks, Matt. I think we having a lot of fun here talking about an interesting subject.
Yeah. So just to recap, there was a survey that went out in December to investigators. We're just kind of getting a sense of trends in the industry, right? What's going on in your little slice of the world here in the industry, and people participated, and they were interested in what the answers were to the survey. So you published them recently, and I reached out to you and said, hey, this is something to come on and chat about. So we knocked out 10 of the 30 questions before, so we're going to make our way through the rest of this, and let's dive right back in. So then the next question is, do you belong to your state association?
Yeah. And again, this went out to mainly associations, so it's not surprising, but almost 77% are members of their state association. But again, you got 24% here that's not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's really important, to support your state association and on so many different levels. Networking, growing your business, that's where business gets done. The ability to handle multiple assignments or find people that specialize in areas that you don't specialize in. So
absolutely, you learn about laws and trends, and what's the latest legislative stuff coming down the pike.
Which is part of the national association, which is the next question, right? A good segue here. Question 12, do you belong to a national or international PI association?
Yeah, so 61% said they do belong to a national or international association. I know me and you, Matt, both belong to both national, international, and state associations.
Sure. Yeah, and I cannot stress the importance of this one. So the 40% that are out there, get with the program and look into a national association. There are a couple different ones out there, and a couple different international ones as well. My preference, NALI and NCISS, I'm a part of both of them nationally. They do different things. NCISS is really important for legislation. And man, is there some shakings of trees going on here with regards to subcontracting and 1099s. There's a lot going on with that, right?
Yeah, man, that's a whole nother ball game. So, Matt and I are both on the board of directors for NCISS, and that's the watchdog for legislation in our profession. So, man, if you're not involved in that, you need to be, because it's important. Right now, we're fighting some battles.
Yeah, all hands on deck, man, because the ability to do 1099 contracting work is being threatened. And it really has nothing to do with private investigators, which is crazy. It really has more to do with like Uber drivers and things like that. They're trying to make sure that people that do subcontracting work are covered under workers' comp, or have the right insurances in places to protect them. So the spirit of the law makes sense, but it's so I guess it covers everything in a way that I don't think they intended it to do. So it's interesting that the Department of Labor just put out a ruling on it, and I'm sure you'll hear more about that in the future. So that's on a national level. Like, you need to support NCISS. Please go check out their website. They sponsor the podcast as well. You'll see in the show notes there. Their things. And NALI, right, the National Association of Legal Investigators. That's because I do a lot of work with lawyers. That's kind of a wheelhouse for me, and just being able to meet people that can help me cover through the country is really important.
Yeah, NALI's another good one. And
Yeah.
I was on the board. I don't remember if you've been on the board or not, but that's NALI.org and NCISS.org.
Yeah. Yep. And then globally, the two out there are WAD and Intellinet. I've been very involved with WAD and enjoying it a lot. I've made a lot of connections and a lot of friends, and Intellinet's great too. They're going to Ireland, right? You're putting that one together,
so,
right?
Yeah, I'm on the board for them, and the school.
Of course you are.
We're going to Dublin in April, and I'm a member of WAD. But so yeah, they're both good associations.
Yeah. WAD is going to be in Panama, so you can either go to the sun or you can go to Europe and sit in the rain. You can decide what you want to do.
That's right.
It's literally going on within days of each other, which is cool. Or you can go to both. I know people that are actually going to both, which is pretty insane. Okay, next question. How many PI industry associations do you belong? Interesting that 17 people skipped that. I don't know, maybe they're embarrassed. But let's talk about the answers here.
Yeah, the bulk of them, 65% belong to 1 to 3, and 27% belong to 4 to 6, and about 5% belong to 7 to 10. And I'm part of that 11% that are the 11 or more, 3%, and I'm one of those.
Me too. Full disclosure, I answered that question as 11.
Good.
So
you made up 2 of the 3.
I'm not quite to your level, but I'm getting there. Okay, so next question here. Does your household derive the main income from your employment as a private investigator? Okay, let's talk about the answers here.
This one was really interesting to me because you got a lot of part-timers out there. You got a lot of guys that retired, whatever. But I think this is going to have a bearing on one of the next questions that you'll see related to income. But 61.5% do derive their income, their main income from PI world, but 39% do not.
Right.
So I think that lends itself to part-timers, I'm guessing, or someone that hadn't built their business.
Yeah, or they're married to sugar mamas or sugar daddies.
There you go.
One or the other.
There you go.
Okay, so the next question here. What is your yearly level of income from your PI employment? So 7 did skip this one, but let's talk about the answers here.
Yeah, so I was hoping that people wouldn't get confused with, how much do you make personally versus what is your agency, make. And so the ones that skipped it might have skipped it because of that. And so, you got about, 40% that are under 75,000, a year. And then you've got, 24% that's over 151,000 per year. So it's kind of, I think, very indicative of our profession.
Yeah, a lot of that has to do with the market that you're in as well, and whether or not you're running a full-time operation. Because I think there are, though, a lot of ex-law enforcement that may be collecting a pension and aren't quite working full-time, and I think that probably skewed the answers a little bit too. Okay, do you specialize in one type of case? That was the next.
Well, to your point, National Association of Legal Investigators, you've got a lot of people, 24% that do legal and or work with attorneys. And then other is almost 31%. And, that could be a lot of things from computer forensics to, electronic bug sweeps to whatever, and but almost 20% was criminal and 15% insurance. So I don't think any of those are really a shock to us.
Yeah, I mean, and not surprising that the lowest number was domestic.
Yeah.
And it's you'll get the calls though. I think if you repolled this and said what type of work do you get calls for the most, domestic would probably be right up there.
Exactly right.
They get the sticker shock when you tell them how much it's going to cost to actually do the work. There is that. Okay, pushing on. Do you bill by the hour or by the job? Everybody answered this one. And let's talk about the results here.
You know, what's interesting is some states you cannot do anything except by the hour. In other words, you can't do contingency, is what I should say. Get a percentage of a case, but 71% bill by the hour, a little over 5% by the job, and 23% do both. So I thought that was interesting that you had that high that did both.
Yeah, the only time I've seen contingency talked about, I think John Hoda had talked about it once when he was doing estate work and recovery of estate work, where he would get a percentage of whatever he assisted in getting recovered for heirs and things like that. But I haven't really seen that model in other states. I know it's definitely not allowed in New York, but it is very interesting to how this is done. And we do like. In my business model, there are some things that are flat rate. So I don't know if that would be considered by the job. And there are other other things we do that are hourly. But the flat rate is usually based on the hours that it would take to do it. So
that's right. That's right. Yeah, exactly right. But figures into it. But it's an interesting question.
Definitely. Okay, question 18. Do you charge the client an hourly rate of, and then you have 50 to 75, 76 to 100, 101 to 125, 126 to 150, 151 to 200, or more than 200. This would be dollars per hour. So let's talk about the responses a little.
This one to me was really interesting, and it's one of the reasons I wanted so many PIs to respond to this and use it as a tool to increase their rates, because basically, if you look at all of those figures combined, about 89% bill more than $100 an hour. Yeah. So, you've got roughly, what is that? 20%, something like that's under $100 an hour. And so you got $75 to $100, 29% bill in that range, but the high majorities over 100. And surprisingly to me, you had almost 10% that was more than 200. So that would tell me that's probably a specialty like computer forensics or something like that.
Yeah, or the market that they're in. I think the $50 to $75 people are probably 1099 guys, that work for other, they own their own company. They have their own PI license, but they're subcontracted out to do like surveillance work or driving or whatever. I would think that would make up that almost 10%, but I could be wrong.
Makes sense. Yep.
Okay. So how many cases do you typically work per month? It would be 1 to 10, 11 to 20, 21 to 30, 31 to 40, 41 to 50, or 50 or more.
Yeah, I think this also speaks to the type of work that you do, because 53% do 1 to 10 per month, and 22 do 11 to 20%, 20 cases. So I think that really has to do with your caseload and what you do.
Yeah, the type of investigation you're doing too. If you're working on a capital murder case, I mean, shoot, that could take 3 months. You're working on one case, 6 months, and it could take a year more. I think it all just depends on the type of assignment that you're doing, right?
Yeah.
All right. Question 19. How many licensed PIs are there in your company? 1 to 3, 4 to 7, 8 to 10, 11 to 15, 16 to 20, 21 to 30, or 31 or more.
I wish I had broke out 1 only and then 2 to 3 or something like that, because 77% said 1 to 3, and I bet you a majority of those are only 1 person operations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're probably right. I know like some of the guys that work for me actually carry their own license as well. So you do get models like that. And for me as a business owner, I kind of encourage it.
Sure.
I think it doesn't mean they're running out the door if they have their own license. It allows them, and I like one of my guys is very interested in getting involved in different associations. He actually just joined Nally. Oh no, I'm sorry, just joined Intelnet, and he wanted to have full membership. In order to do that, you got to actually have your license, right? So it does I think it promotes a better quality employee as well. Somebody that cares enough to actually get their own certification, which is interesting. But they're going to
I agree. And there's some tax benefits in that as well.
Exactly. And then it's a question of, are you paying them, as a 1099, or are you paying them, as a W-2? Talk to your accountant. I'm not touching it. I'm not touching it.
Me neither.
Okay. Question 21. How many support staff, non-licensed PIs work in your company? 0, 1 to 3, 4 to 7, 8 to 15, 16 or more.
So see, I think this goes hand in hand with the previous question. If that question was how many PIs are in your company and it was 1, then this probably would go hand in hand with that, because on this question, there's 68% have no support staff, which tells you it's probably a one-person operation as well.
Yeah. I remember talking about this recently with somebody where we were talking about growth, and we were talking about, okay, when do you hire the support staff, and how many do you hire? Like, how many support staff should you have per investigator that's out there? And I know you and I offline, we've had this question as I was scaling up and growing. It's like, hey, what model are you using? What would you recommend? I think the general consensus is you should have 1 support staff to every 3 investigators, right? Is that what it was?
Yeah, I think that's about right. But it also depends again on what type of cases you do, and do you have a case management system?
Right.
Because we manage a lot more than that, but it's because we have a case management system.
Sure. Yeah, and you have the ability to do that, and the support staff could be different things too, right? It could be a quality control person. It could be a bookkeeper, accounts receivable, accounts payable. Payable is a tough one. As a business owner, very hard to let go of that one.
Yeah, it is. That's amen to that, brother.
Especially when in the industry we work in, when we're dealing with frauds all the time.
That's right. That's a tough one, man.
Very difficult. Okay. Does your state regulations allow you to work for more than one company at a time?
Yeah, so that's interesting because, Texas, when I first became a PI, you could only work for one company, and now you can work for, as many as you want to, be licensed by multiple companies. So, almost 84% says, yes, you can work for more than one company at a time.
Interesting to see how this Department of Labor issue is going to affect that, right?
Man, that's going to drive that one down.
Yeah, I think so, man. It's going to, people are going to have to make some tough choices. Again, I understand the spirit of the bill, but I definitely it needs to be tweaked a little bit. And I'm so happy to see NCIS like jumping on it. I'm happy that I'm serving on the legislative committee, and man, these guys active. It's got to be one of the most active boards that I've seen, where they're just pushing away, and they're the severity and the seriousness of what's going on. Like they're taking it very serious, which is amazing.
Yeah, I agree.
That board's always been like that. And also, past presidents and stuff have been very.
Yeah, and we're fixing to hit the hill. Go to Washington and talk to our congressmen and all that stuff. So it's an important part of what CISS does.
That'll be in early May. Definitely visit their website to check out more. Okay, do you use an online case management system? We had just talked about that, right? Okay, so the yes or no answer here. I was surprised by this answer.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, 60, almost 67% do not use a case management system, and and so there's pros and cons of that. If you're one person operation, then you may not need that. But honestly, that comes back to, if for no other reason, the amount of paper that you end up storing and having to deal with at some point in your life. So it's a lot cleaner, and you can certainly grow easier if you do have it.
Yeah, and just be better organized and write better reports, take better notes. And I mean, there's so many advantages to it. And, understanding that it is a line item for your business.
That's right.
Like using the excuse that it's too expensive is the worst excuse that's out there, because you literally can write it off. And you build it into your price. You should
Absolutely.
have some sort of administrative charge in every invoice that you have sending out, that you're recovering these expenses. You should be figuring that in your billing.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Plus, I mean, it does a lot of those case management systems do everything for you, billing and
Yeah.
accounts receivable. I mean, it does. So it's the thing to have.
Yeah, I know. I use Crosstracks, and they're a supporter of this show. And you use TrackOps, I
That's
think,
right.
right? So, which is, it's interesting. I've not talked to anybody over at TrackOps, but Crosstracks, they respect TrackOps. Like they're not
Yeah.
like, oh, that system's trash, you shouldn't be with them. When you tell them, as soon as you tell them like, hey, use that, they're like, okay. Well, that's a good system to use. We do things a little bit differently. If you ever feel like you want to change, then we're here for you.
Yeah.
And they are a little different in how they do things. But both these companies, great companies. I know Crosstracks is SOC 2 certified. I don't know if TrackOps has that
I believe they
certification.
are. I believe they
Yeah.
are. And the two owners of TrackOps were PIs before they were software
Yeah.
gurus.
Well, same thing with Crosstracks, and they still are. They still own
Yeah.
their investigation company, which is kind of neat. But again, regardless of who you use, you should be using somebody or using something. Excel and Power, Excel sheets really can only take you so far.
Right.
Dropbox can only take you so far. You should really have a better system implemented. Okay, so next question here. Do you use an outside payroll processing company? Again, another surprise here on this that so many do
Yeah,
not.
it kind of goes hand in hand with the case management, though. So 37% almost say that yes, they do, and almost 64% say that they do not. So if you don't use a case management system, chances are you're not going to use an outside payroll processing company either.
Yeah, I mean, there are major advantages to using somebody, and to me, it really comes down to tax liability. You know, I don't want another task to remember to pay Uncle Sam. I'd rather have the payroll company just deal with it.
Amen.
It's hard enough with sales tax, making sure that the sales tax is getting paid. But having to write it, and I did start my business for many years. I think I had like 4 or 5 years when it was me and one other person. I think um, I would handle all that myself, and I would have to write additional checks to New York State for all the taxes and stuff, and the federal. It was annoying. I'd have to go to the bank and hand in like different forms and stuff.
I know, man. You said an interesting thing that I left out of this survey, and that's sales tax. I wish I would have had a few questions about sales tax, because not every state has to collect it, and so interesting.
Well, listen, version 2.0, man.
Yeah, I've already got it in the works, man.
It's in the hopper, right?
Yep.
Okay. Question 25. Do you have a physical office outside your home? Very interesting here too.
Yeah, this actually surprised me because there's more that have an office outside of their home than I thought we were going to get, because almost 47% said yes, they do.
Yeah, and it is interesting because it's a business that really is a remote business, right? So making the argument to say like I could do it from home is fine. You talk to the data brokers, they don't like that. They don't like you working from home. You got to meet certain parameters and guidelines and all that other stuff. But because of the field work, when you're outside, you're in the field work. When you have report writing to do, or you have company upkeep to do, theoretically you could do it at home. So it's not completely unreasonable. I have a professional space in the city. I just feel it looks professional. It's better that way. But that's one choice to do it that way.
I think it gives you an attitude when you step into the office. It gives you, an attitude of professionalism, and it's time to get down to work kind of a scenario. So it helps you.
Okay, so I'm almost segueing like crazy here. Look at this. How many industry databases do you subscribe to and use? It's like I read this survey before I started talking to you about it. All right, so the answer is 1 to 3, 4 to 8, 9 to 15, or 16 or more.
Yeah, and predominantly, man, that's 60% have 1 to 3, and 33% have 4 to 8, and everybody else is after that. I personally, I've got like 4 go-to databases that we use every day, and almost multiple times constantly. But you got to have those ones that are tucked away for the hard ones.
Yeah, and I think that you could probably break this question down into industry paid databases and open source databases, because I think
Yeah.
that may change the answer on that too. You know,
I tried to get to that because of the word subscribe. So
right.
I was trying to, that's what I was trying to do with that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I can see that. I can see that. Okay. All right. Next one. How often do you upgrade computers, cameras, etc.? Okay. Only as needed, every 1 to 2 years, every 3 to 4 years, 5 years or more.
Yeah, not surprising, 55% only as needed, and 18% 1 to 2 years, and 21% 3 to 4 years. So depend. I guess it really depends on what you're talking about. Cameras versus computers.
Yeah, it's interesting. You talk about the bug sweeping equipment too.
Yeah.
That's got a shelf life. And I know, like I've been approached to buy a couple of different bug sweeping businesses, and when you start looking at, all right, well, what do you have? What are your assets? And they start listing assets of equipment that's like 7, 8 years old. I was like, no, I don't want to know the value of the junk in your closet, man. I want to know the value of the stuff that you actually use, right?
That's right. Yeah, and that's one of those things. I mean, I do that. So we've got, every bell and whistle, but the companies that promote that equipment come out with something, because self-perpetuating, they have to come out with a newer version, and then you have to go get trained on it. So it's, it's a cycle.
It is a cycle. It's a vicious cycle, man.
Yeah, man.
Okay, we're almost done here. Do you subcontract work to other PIs?
Yeah, 75% say yes, they do, and 25% say no, they don't. So,
yeah, very interesting to see how the new Department of Labor ruling here is going to change that. I think it'll skew it a little bit, but not much. I think we're going to figure out how to get this done.
We have to.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Next question. If you do subcontract work for other PIs, do you offer a discounted rate? Skip by
this was
10
a little
people.
interesting.
Yeah.
This one was interesting to me because almost 41% said they don't offer other PIs a discount, which I always have, and I always, it depends really on the type of case and the dollar amount involved and everything else. But I always offer 30% or more. So, but you're looking at 5 to 10% offer a 16% offer a 5 to 10% discount, and 22% offer 11 to 20% discount. So it's if you're going to work in different geographic areas other than where you live, you almost have to subcontract. So you got to play ball with the other side.
For sure. I think as somebody that's been contacted to do subcontracting work, or somebody who has used subcontracting work, I think you have to. There should be a reduction. But then there's also that argument of like, okay, well, if I'm going to do your work, it's going to take me away from doing my other work where I'm billing that at 100% rate. Why should I give you a discount? You need it done. But then, how is the person that's contacting you to do the work, how are they going to make some money on it too? Like they need you got to leave them enough room to mark it up, essentially, is what it comes down to. And you got to understand that the company that's calling you, they're going to be paying you, and you're going to get paid much quicker than the company that's hired that particular company to do the work. So they're assuming the risk of payment. They're sitting on that invoice, right? They're ultimately responsible liability wise, right? They're sharing that liability with you.
Right.
So those are all things to consider when you're like, okay, I can take less. I mean, I understand though why they wouldn't do it based upon the argument of, well, I have all this other work that I'm billing at 100% rate, right?
Well, but you're getting a case off of that you did not have to market, you did not have to go out and find a client, et cetera, and there's going to be a time when you're going to need them.
100%. One hand washes the other. I got to say, most of the subs that I work with, it's a mutual relationship.
That's
for
right.
sure. We help each other
Has
out.
to be.
And I got to be honest with you, when I have a choice to send work to a particular individual that I know it has a higher hourly rate than somebody else who can do the exact same job, and I know that they're going to get it done, I'm going to choose the lower person every time.
Yeah.
Because of
Human
margins,
nature,
right?
man.
No, it's
Yeah,
it's margins. You know, like I'm in business to be in business.
That's
You
right.
know, if I know that person could do the same job, like the job requirement, and they're charging me $25 an hour less than the other one, it's a no-brainer. Like you said, human
That's
nature.
right.
You know,
And it's another reason why you need to go to associations and conferences, because you meet people, and that's how you develop those kind of contacts that you feel comfortable with.
for sure, for sure. Okay.
Last question.
Last question. I just had to scroll down to make sure it was the last one. Okay, Q30 probably should have given that one away. Okay, all right. What region of the U.S. are you in? The Northeast, Southeast, Northwest, Southwest, North Central, or South Central?
Yeah, and I just wanted to know this, from curiosity as to where we were getting the survey answers from, and almost 20% were from the Northeast, and almost 20% were from the Southeast, and almost 25% were from the Southwest. So it just tells you you're getting answers from all over the U.S. So you don't have it being skewed because it's all coming from New York City, where they charge a higher dollar amount or whatever.
Yeah, no, definitely, it's a rate. I mean, rate driven for that. So the data, you want it to be as pure as it possibly can. So that's definitely an appropriate question.
Yeah, man.
Well, this was fun, man. This was really fun to go through. I hope there is going to be a version 2 at some point. Again, I'm a stats nerd. The statistics in college was like one of my favorite classes to take. I was the kid who bought the newspaper that had the box scores for baseball every day, and took them and entered them into computer and kept my own stat sheet. When I was like 12, 13 years old. Yeah, I just it was nuts. And then they came out with this video game called Micro League Baseball, where you could actually plug in statistics and create your own teams and leagues. And
Nice.
Every day I was just updating stuff, and then I would run simulated games. Yeah, I had no life, I had no friends.
Yeah, that's fun, man. But I think as an investigator, you have to be attuned to statistical information such as this and stuff, But
Sure.
But I do want to tell everybody that they can get a copy of this at piinstitute.com, piinstitute.com. So you can download your own copy of this.
Yeah, and there's a link in the show notes. Kelly is a huge supporter of PI Perspectives, Investigators Toolbox. He's got a bunch of trainings in the toolbox for classes. I think there's 6 classes that are in there. Plus, he offers discounts to Toolbox members to actually do other trainings as well. It's a great resource, and as you can see, Kelly's got a passion for keeping his finger on the pulse of the industry. So I want to thank you, Kelly, for doing this, and thank you for coming on and chatting about this a little. I'm going to stop sharing the screen here.
Yeah, brother, it's always good, man. And thank you for all you do for the profession as well. And for everyone listening or watching, I hope you take this statistic and the statistical information and use it to better your rates and your business. So
sure.
Good luck with it, man.
Yeah, and shoot Kelly a message. If you can't find him, you're a crappy investigator. If you have any questions, on how to do things, Kelly's one of those guys that's always going to respond to you, and me too. Just drop an email. Please go follow Kelmar Global on LinkedIn and Satellite Investigations on LinkedIn, in addition to our our regular accounts on LinkedIn. So thanks everybody for checking this out, and we'll catch everyone on the next episode. Take care.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it, Matt.
Yep.
Thank you, Kelly, for sharing this amazing survey. You can actually see the results at the PI Institute for Education's website. The link's in the show notes, or Google it. We also want to thank the Campbell Insurance Group for sponsoring our podcast. Remember to tell them you listen, so you can save $50 when you apply for insurance, and additional thanks goes to Scope Now, Pacific Liability Research, and the PI Institute for Education for sponsoring the podcast. Also, don't forget about investigatorstoolbox.com, where you can type in version 2.0 25% to save $50 when you do join. And please follow Matt at Satellite Investigations on LinkedIn. If you have a question or a comment about the show, email Matt at matthews@satellitepi.com, and you can also find him on Instagram and Facebook. We'd like your feedback to bring you the best shows possible. And we'll be back next week with a new show, so tune in and stay safe out there.